joke, but it's totally not.
My
And
friend
we're
promised me to hire him.
live. It is Tuesday. What's the date? October 6th, 2020.
Yes.
5:02 p.m. We're late for no good reason, and I'm not going to apologize to any goddamn one of you. I do have a story to tell you, however.
Okay.
At the very beginning, and I mean day frickin' one of the Trump campaign, of the Trump administration, I tweeted what I thought was going to be a series that was going to continue through the entire Trump administration. It was called #Notes from Under Trump. And I thought every day that there was that Trump was president, I would tweet something encouraging to people who needed encouragement inside and outside of government. And I would hashtag it Notes from Under Trump and note the day. And I did this for a few weeks, and I was going to stop, but then a certain senior level official told me, don't stop, it's good for morale. And so I didn't stop, but eventually I stopped. And then today, it suddenly occurred to me, of all days to do Notes from Under Trump, today is the most important day to do it, because the first words of Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, on which Notes from Under Trump from which it was derived, are the following: I am a sick man, I am a spiteful man, I am an unpleasant man, I think my liver is diseased. That is literally the opening of the book, Notes from Underground. And so I thought to myself, he is a sick man, he is a spiteful man, he is an unpleasant man, he knows his lungs are diseased. It fit so perfectly day 300 whatever of the Trump administration, day 1,000 whatever. It merged with Dostoevsky perfectly. So today I revived the #Notes from Under Trump hashtag. I adapted Dostoevsky for purposes of the Trump administration, and I'm not sorry. We are not allowed to have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, we are allowed to have Natasha Bertrand, who is here. She is from Politico. She started the Trump administration. I don't know anybody who the Trump administration has been better for, who is not a grifter. I know that there are like grifters who the Trump administration has been really good for, but people who rose to the occasion from obscurity by doing great work during the Trump administration. I'm not sure I know, 2016, Natasha is super young reporter at Business Insider who, pardon me, no one had ever heard of, right? Is that unfair?
No, it's not. I mean, I just started and I was covering breaking news, and I was actually interested more in foreign policy. So I was covering more about what Obama was doing and the State Department in particular, and not really the election.
2 minutes out of college, right?
I graduated in 2014. Yeah.
Yeah, so 2.5 minutes out of college.
2.5 years out of college, yeah. But yes, and I was really interested in Russia as well. So when Russia interfered, my editor was like, you are interested in foreign things and Russia, so why don't you see what's going on here? And
you were a Business Insider?
Yeah, in New York.
And were you
so began a meteoric rise.
Yeah, were you doing TV or were you just doing writing stuff?
I started doing TV in 2017, and that was more after I started covering Russia's interference in the election and all of that. And that's around the time I met Ben, actually, mid 2017.
Yeah, we met. I want to say 2017 at some point. I became aware of Natasha because she had a
This is a good
truly
story.
deranged text exchange or email exchange with somebody who really should have known better. Why don't you tell us that story? That's how we kind of met.
Yeah, this is a
Is
fun
she
one.
allowed to
So,
tell us?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was,
It's all
she
public.
published the whole damn
Okay.
thing.
it was not off the record.
Oh,
That's
okay,
the crazy
amazing.
thing.
This is great.
Yeah, so it was Ty Cobb, who was the president's lawyer at the time in 2017. It seems like
Not the
literally a
baseball
decade
player.
ago. Not the baseball player, the lawyer.
Although related.
Bad joke. Wait,
Are
really?
related.
No, they are. They are distant
they?
cousins.
Wait,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really?
Oh,
Oh my god.
I
I
didn't know
believe
that.
they are like distant
I don't
cousins.
think you get like accidentally named Ty Cobb. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
say.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
The
So
original
no, so
Ty
I-
Cobb didn't have anything like the mustache, though.
Right, the mustache is all him. It's like handlebar.
I want to hear everything
yeah.
about this. So this man with a handlebar mustache accosted you on the internets, or just in like a
Kind of.
directly text message.
Are you on drugs, Natasha?
That's what he asked me. In
You
fact,
literally asked her this.
he asked me if I asked him a simple question about the president and him. I think this was around the time James Comey was fired. And he wrote me back and he said, "Are you on drugs?" And it was around 1:00 in the morning when he wrote me back, and it was
And
a
you
whole
were like
thing.
hydrochloroquine count and like it was like
Inject it.
Do steroids.
And
But I think it was, I actually think it was like, before you finish the story, I actually want to suggest that this was the first of what became a pattern. So when Ty Cobb did this, I thought, oh my God, the president's lawyer is deranged. He's texting or emailing a young reporter who asked a perfectly reasonable question, asking her if she's on drugs. But it's actually a total pattern of the way the president's legal team has behaved since, whether it's Rudy Giuliani going on television and saying all kinds of things that, you shouldn't say, or John Dowd and Ty Cobb having lunch in front of a New York Times reporter and discussing strategy, as one does. I always meet with my lawyers in the presence of New York Times reporters because, of course. But like that, the first example of that was, I think, the first example of just like a totally deranged behavior that was so out of what normal lawyering looks like, much less lawyering for the President of the United States, was this interaction with you.
And the irony was that everyone thought he was going to be like the adult in the room. That's why he was hired, is because he was going to really take everything back on track. And
Okay,
then-
I'm gonna rewind. A lot of people don't know about this, including me. So I'm gonna start with, how did this entire exchange start, and like why did you start? Like, how were you interacting with him, and then like what kind of happened, and like how did it all play out? I don't know this story.
Vaguely.
Oh my god! I looked up his picture. This is insane.
No, the
Well, you can, like,
mustache
share it.
is
Literally,
the mustache.
Like, he's like, I feel like he's about to do a rum commercial.
And I want to say that when
Most
I
interesting man in the
ran
world.
into Ty Cobb at Pan Quotidien and snapped pictures of him from across the room, I
I think I remember
resisted the urge to tweet them, but I did text them to Natasha.
I don't
Yes,
like to.
I
Ben
recall.
and I both don't like to make fun of people's appearance, but when you do something like that, like you're just kind of like inviting, like the bow tie, waxed mustache, like you're just asking
No,
for
that
it.
is a no joke mustache.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
You
go
were
ahead.
saying, Natasha.
No, it's all good. So I vaguely remember reaching out to him. I had a question about like the timing of something. It was about Comey's firing. And so I was asking the president's lawyer a question about that. Or it was a little bit later. I think it was probably after the special counsel was appointed. So a couple days after Comey was fired. And I just emailed him. And he didn't respond at all to the substance of my question. Instead, he wrote me back. And granted, I emailed him late at night, not thinking that he would actually get back to me that night. I thought he'd get back to me in the morning. And then late at night, probably around midnight or 1, he wrote me back and he was like, "Are you on drugs? I've already addressed this, or this has already been answered." And it was shocking at the time because it was early on in the Trump administration, and I don't think people were necessarily used to that kind of behavior from people high up in the administration, let alone the president's personal lawyer.
Given up the ghost on all norms of social decency.
Exactly.
Civility, yeah.
So this was like, whoa, like how could anyone close to the president say something like that? Now it's kind of probably normal, but yeah, that's that. He never apologized.
So, yeah, we met shortly thereafter for breakfast in
So Ben
in
called
New York.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just incredulous about it. And, this was like, who the hell are you and why does the president's lawyer think you're on drugs? And for that matter, like, were you, or was there something to it, or are they just insane? So we kind of got to know each other that way. You, unlike a lot of people, since the end of the Russia saga, which never really ends, but the investigative side of it kind of ended, you have just gone on to do interesting other things. And now you're kind of reporting on, everything from the president's relationship with the intelligence community in an ongoing way, and to presidential felled by illness kind of COVID stuff. So how do you understand, for a while you were the kind of Russia saga correspondent, first of Business Insider, then of The Atlantic, and then of Politico. But how do you understand, what does it mean to cover national security in the Trump administration now? What's the scope of what's your beat versus somebody else's?
That's a really good question. So I'm pretty much interested in all things having to do with the ongoing politicization of the intelligence community by the Trump administration. And I know that obviously it's not the first time intelligence has been politicized, but I think that this is the first time we're seeing such drastic measures being taken by Trump appointees to kind of make him happy and manipulate things in order to specifically boost his political prospects and especially his reelection. So I think a really good example is everything that the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, has been doing since he was installed, since he replaced Rick Grinnell. I mean, the tension between the career people at the intel agencies and the political appointees is a really interesting thing, because right now what you're seeing is kind of churn on the lower levels, and even the people who are supposed to be kind of the adults and are supposed to be pushing back on this kind of stuff, like Gina Haspel, the CIA director, for example, people aren't necessarily happy with her at the lower levels. So I think this tension is really interesting, and it's what I've switched to, I think, focused on more since the Russia investigation ended. But like you said, it is an ongoing story, right? I mean, this all started because of the Russia investigation, this hatred that Trump had for the CIA and the intel agencies and his desire to install loyalists at the top is all because he just wanted to project that it was all wrong, that 2016, everything that happened in 2016 was a witch hunt. So that, and, obviously just looking at what the agencies are doing to protect the election, foreign interference, that's still a big topic. And it's one that I'm continuing to be interested in because, I mean, again, it's not just Russia, right? It's other countries that are interfering as well. So I think it's going to continue to be a big story.
How much of it do you think, and I'm just curious, how much of it do you think is Russia actually now farming out interference to other places? To other places that you wouldn't expect, to try to interfere in the elections? Like
Ukrainian actors who were just sanctioned by the Treasury Department.
Oh, no. I mean, well, yes. No, Ukrainian stuff.
Not zero.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. I mean, I'm actually curious, I'm actually kind of curious about the idea of it going beyond Eastern Europe. And and them sending or commissioning bots or types of like content moderation farms or certain types of things like in India or like other places that also helps to disguise what I feel is part of like the bot network that all of the platforms have tried to build up in the last couple of years since the election. I just don't have a sense of whether that's something that's happening or not. And
I don't really
curious.
either. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't really know. I think that we have to differentiate also between the kind of social media manipulation and online influence operations versus like laundering disinformation through a congressional committee or hacking and dumping or using the media to insert narratives into American discourse. I think that probably when compared to the latter, the online social media manipulation aspect of it is probably maybe not less significant, but there is a risk of overblowing it and giving it probably more credence than it deserves. Whereas more subtle things like, you know, them farming out these tasks to bad actors that may not have a direct tie to Russian intel or a direct tie to Chinese intel or Iranian, whatever it may be, is probably much more insidious. I mean, I think the Russians are pretty fine with having, you know, their trolls from the Internet Research Agency wreak havoc online, and they just don't really care at this point
they just let it go. So like wherever it goes. Yeah, fair enough. I think that's right.
But I think that's a really interesting question, whether because the intel community has been saying that they've been continuing to evolve and shift tactics as we become kind of more savvy about what they're doing. So I think, yeah, it's something to watch.
Yeah, totally.
So what is spending when you like organize your mind these days? How much of it is about politicization of the intelligence community? How much of it is about the crazy shit of the day? How much of it is about enterprise stuff involving something we haven't even heard of because you haven't broken it yet? Like, what's the I don't want to use a gross image, but if we sectioned your brain, what are the different lobes of the Natasha Bertrand brain working about, and how big are they relative to each other?
So I try to focus mostly on enterprise stuff. So I really like chasing down tips that I get and investigating and reporting on something that no one's been thinking about or no one knew about and just had zero idea about. That's my favorite thing, breaking news in an unpredictable way. And then probably my second favorite thing is following threads of things that I've been reporting on. So like checking in with my sources and seeing whether there's any new grumbles in CIA or wherever it may be about certain issues, which is how I was able to report that there was some tension between the CIA director and Russia House at the agency a couple weeks ago. So that's the kind of thing
and
where
I want to ask you, we had a long discussion of that in lieu of fun recently, which was actually how we started getting audience demands to have you on. So I want to talk to you specifically about that story. But go on first.
Yeah, and then probably not my least favorite, I wouldn't say that, but probably the third smallest part is reaction. So, you know, reacting to Trump getting COVID and how is that going to affect national security and how is that going to impact foreign adversaries' intelligence collection, et cetera. So that's probably the more reactive stuff is things that I would prefer not to have to do. I like focusing more of my time on enterprising and investigative stuff, but I would say those are the three buckets.
It's a great question. Kate? I was just going to ask, I'm kind of it's really hard to know for people on screen. So I was briefly, when I started right out of college in 2006, I was at abcnews.com. And it was, I would say, the redheaded stepchild of ABC News. They just no one paid any attention to it. It was I literally like I sat at a shelf that was like this big. It was just enough to like hold a keyboard.
Oh my
And I
God.
like typed, and I like no one cared anything about what I did, and I like people gave me shit for coming. I still dressed like I was in college. I came in every day with like in like a sweat in like well in jeans and a sweatshirt, and people were like, and I'm like, it's not like we do anything real here. Like they're like,
Well, it's 2006, so digital like really wasn't a thing, right? At all. It was all focused
it
on
really
TV
wasn't. And there was like,
yeah.
and it was like, and if they had like pretended like it was, or there had been any forward momentum, I would have like picked up on it, but there was clearly none. So I was like, okay, goodbye. But there was like basically like this kind of interesting moment. The one interesting moment was that like, oh, Brian, oh my God, I'm going to forget his last name. Of course I am, because I need to remember it right now. But Brian something broke this story of the Mark Foley page scandal. From ABC News. Do you remember this? Do you remember this?
Oh, I remember this. Yeah, of course.
The Mark Foley page scandal. And it was like, and he broke it from abcnews.com from like a random person who had like contacted. And it was like
Congressman Foley hitting on pages.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was completely gross. It was
they
super
were like
gross.
15.
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
And that was like summer fall of 2006. So that was like the big story for abcnews.com. And still everything about that site was just like clickbait. Like no one wanted, like it was just like a joke. And so like I think that there was like I always wondered like how one made a transition from like doing kind of work on that site to like doing serious journalism that I associated with ABC News, because I didn't think it was like kind of a completely garbage entity. Like I thought that it had a lot to offer, but like I don't know, there was no clear path. And I'm sure
Right, my dog's chewing on a power cord.
Oh, that seems
no,
good.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
Power cords are bad.
Very bad.
Especially if they're plugged in.
It is not plugged in. That's,
okay, well there you go.
It's this thing. It's like a.
Oh, one of those things, yeah.
Yes. Sorry, go on.
But I'm just like very curious. Like I left. I went actually to Esquire, and I went to like a bunch of other places after that, and like I just wanted to go write, and that was like what I wanted to do, and like it was. But I'm very curious, like if I had stayed, what my path would have ever been at ABC. I remember I had one interaction with Jake Tapper in which I like said something about
he was at NBC.
Yeah,
Forgot
and
that.
like there was like I like said something on like a company-wide email that was like about me knowing someone at Facebook, and he like was like, "Who do you know at Facebook?" And I was like, this was in like 2006. It was like 2 years old, and I was like, like,
oh my God.
But it was like, so it was like kind of one of those things. But anyways, I think that it's kind of interesting to me that like I don't know, there used to be a very straight line to do TV. Like you went to a certain number of places. You went to Syracuse, you went to like NYU, you went to like various places to do that type of thing. And now they just kind of like raise people up that have done good writing and good reporting and expect them to be camera people. And I think that that's a really high bar. And like, have you enjoyed doing that? Like, do you like kind of going on screen and presenting your face and your ideas? Do you think that kind of stamps your ideas so that like people don't steal them? Or do you feel like it's kind of like you'd rather just kind of be about the ideas?
So it's a really good question. It has its benefits and its, drawbacks. I think I really like it. Just generally, I love having that platform, and I love having those discussions on air. And yes, they are brief, and yes, they can be superficial, but I think that it's a really valuable source of information for a lot of people, and it's fun. It's really fun. So I do really like it. Obviously, the more substantial work, generally, if you don't actually work full time as a correspondent, is going to be done on the writing side and reporting for your, for your outlet. But I think it's great because it's become a lot more accessible. So like you said, there was that path, and there was that, you study to be a broadcast journalist, and then you go into TV, and it's kind of a straight line. But now, I mean, I'm just thinking of the people on MSNBC who like have their own shows now, like Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes. They started out as like contributors for the channel. They weren't actually journalists for the channel. And they started out, Chris Hayes started out in print, and he ended up with his show on MSNBC, mostly just because of his contributions as an analyst. So yeah, I mean, I think that giving me a chance, for example, when I was at Business Insider and not having ever done TV and really at an outlet that really wasn't well known, six years ago, was great. And I think that more TV outlets should actually do that. Give more young journalists.
That's really like a wonderful piece of advice. Yeah.
So, but I want to say that
because it opens a lot of doors.
You're a very rare animal in the TV space, because you were somebody who was young at a relatively obscure publication from a national media point of view. Mm-hmm. And so there was your Twitter feed, which is a key part of this, I think.
Yeah.
There was MSNBC, and somehow you didn't stop reporting and become a talking head who kind of mouthed off. And that is the super high risk that is like, I don't know, 70, 80, 90% of people in your position. The TV opportunity presents itself. TV is good to you. You have a lot of opportunities. As you say, it opens a lot of doors, and you just forget to bother to do the reporting that drives it, because it's actually not what you're being rewarded for. Right. And so I don't want to embarrass you, but how did you avoid that? Like, that's actually, it's a risk.
I think this is sweet, because I totally agree with Ben. Like, you do this. Like, so it's a nice.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that.
I think I warned you about it very specifically.
We talked about this. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, like it's not like you're somebody that TV is going to be very good to, and the risk is that you have no incentive to do the reporting that actually drives it. And a lot of people have made pretty good careers having started out as really good reporters, but then that turns out actually not to be what they're being rewarded for. And that hasn't happened to you. You've gone from one reporting cool thing to another. And what drives your television appearances is the substance of the stuff you do. So I want to, like somebody's watching who's scratching their head and thinking, how do I do that? And I think it's a really important question.
Yeah, and I've gotten a lot of good advice, I think, throughout my career. And one of the best pieces of advice I got early about TV was that ultimately, if you don't continue to break news and if you don't stay relevant, then you, in that sense, not just being a talking head, then you won't really have any value to these networks. I mean, I think that for some people, they can kind of skate and coast with just being analysts by virtue of maybe their positions. But for a journalist to maintain any kind of credibility, I think you have to keep having that drive and having your ear to the ground and making those calls and doing the digging. And then you'll be called on more. You'll be able to talk about your reporting to a larger audience. That, to me, going on to talk about my reporting and talk about what my colleagues have been reporting is way more valuable than going on to talk about something someone else has reported or something that's happened. So I've always wanted to maintain that, and I've always wanted to be the one breaking the stories rather than just going on to talk about them. And again, I mean, that's kind of what I was told early on is what keeps you in, the rotation. Is if you want this platform, if you want to be able to share your stories and the things that you've written with this huge audience, which is a total privilege, and you have to keep doing the work. And also, I consider myself a journalist first, not a talking head or a TV personality or anything like that. So I want to keep, building sources and breaking news and doing all of that stuff so that I can maintain that career for a long time.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that you really do come across as that. And I also think that that is the best way to stage yourself. Okay, well, I actually listen, I don't want to speak out of turn and tell you what you should do, but because I'm not a journalist.
But here she goes.
Here I go. No, I was just going to say that okay, so someone recently told me so now I'm an academic and I have a bunch of papers that I'm writing and a bunch of ideas that I want to write about. And I was and I've written a bunch of papers that are of a particular type that a lot of people don't necessarily like and some people love and whatever. And people are always going to be well, you should pivot and write and show them you can also write like this, or you could do like this, or and I was yeah, you're right. I should pivot. I should pivot and not write this the way that I've done this, which is journalistic and qualitative. I should just pivot and write this theoretical paper. And somebody was just fuck that. Write what you want to write. If you're going to hate every fucking second of what you write, if it's not what you want to write, and if it's not true to you. And that is the only advice I give to my students and everything else. But I also I extend that advice, which was told to me yesterday, to you, which is just always just do whatever it is that you really want to do. And if you do it well, which you do, it'll serve you well. And I think that that's the right way to kind of go about it.
Yeah, I feel I've just been kind of going with the flow over the last four or 5 years. I mean, I came into journalism at a very weird moment. Pretty much immediately after 6 months after I started journalism, Trump started running for president. So this is pretty much all I've been reporting on for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's from one thing to the next. National security is the thing that I'm most interested in now and that I like writing about the most now. But, when Joe Biden gets elected, if he gets elected, what's it going to be? I just feel I'm just going to see what happens. But
yeah, but you're killing it. And so I think that that's an important thing to remember.
What will you do if Trump loses? I mean, your whole experience of national security reporting is in this bizarre environment that is so atypical of the actual national security questions that normally we think of the president as the person responsible for protecting national security. Your whole experience as a national security reporter is as reporting on the president as a threat to national security, which is not the way the system is supposed to work. So now it's 6 months from now and we have a staid, normal, somewhat log-a-real old guy who's very sensible and normal, who's president. What is Natasha doing?
Who's fairly predictable as well.
Fairly
so predictable.
The intelligence community advises.
They know him,
and he assimilates their advice. He's not especially imaginative, but he's not going to set the world on fire either. What are you bored at that point? Are you have you basically grown up professionally with a idea that the day-to-day operations of the presidency is supposed to be a roller coaster, and you'll be totally disappointed with a basically normal administration with competent staff who literally aren't communicating disease?
I think that it's actually going to take quite a while to return a lot of these institutions to normalcy. So I think there's going to be a lot to report on him, especially because I don't think Trump is going to, even if he loses, he's going to fully disappear. Actually, I would probably bet on that. So I think there's probably going to be a lot of issues to follow as the country returns to not thinking about this 24/7 anymore. But rebuilding all of these institutions is probably going to be an interesting storyline. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be different. It's going to be way less eventful. So maybe I'll switch beats. Who knows?
But I actually was having this conversation with someone yesterday, last night. I was like, what are we going to do when it's not this constant insanity that is funneled
clean
at
my
us?
House.
Well, I mean,
I'm gonna clean my house.
Okay, well, literally,
I'm gonna read a
you're
book.
Clean your house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm gonna read a novel.
No, but we all spent this much time. Did we not spend this much time on stuff before Trump? I think we all spent this much time on politics and everything. If it was our business, we found things to talk about. No,
we did not. We did not. We had hobbies. No, we had hobbies. We had friends who weren't colleagues who, we some of us who weren't hadn't been married for 30 years went on dates. There were all these things that people did. I once took a bicycle and rode around New Zealand. I couldn't do that now.
He did that
because
to be fair, he did that many years before. You did that before you met Tammy, Ben?
No, I did not do that before I met Tammy. I met Tammy in college. I decided it would be a good idea to marry Tammy while riding a bicycle around New Zealand.
Thank you. Sorry.
But
I just wanted to
I mean, some people had children. There were all these things that people did. And
instead of doom scrolling Twitter at 2 a.m.
Exactly. So there is no I think there's going to be a major readjustment period, where we all have PTSD, and it's and for those like Natasha, who there were no before times. There was college, and then there was Trump. What are you going to do? Are you nervous about
Natasha, fuck that. You were old enough to you lived you were a cognizant adult before.
Yes, and I studied politics Trump. And all that in college, and I was following everything very closely. And yeah, I mean,
I will say that I'm not going to begrudge you the fact that you had to come into an era of Trump that was disgusting and terrible, but it was not 2012 is not the worst time. That was you had a solid 4 years of normalcy there.
Yeah, I mean, there was still a lot to report on. I mean, I remember Syria was the big news on TV every night, the civil war in Syria, before Trump started running for president.
Yeah, it was almost we cared about world health crises. Yeah,
it's crazy to think that was
crazy. Yeah.
The top news. I mean, obviously deservedly so, but it was, people would not. I mean, that would never make the nightly news now. It's just interesting.
All right, let's take some audience questions. I just want you all to notice that we've got 3 of the usual faces here.
But hold on, don't belittle them. I love these usual faces. They are actually
I'm not belittling the usual faces. I'm belittling the 160 non-usual faces who are not on the screen because they rejected me when I invited them on the screen, or they didn't post a question. And so I'm all right, I gotta bring on the usual people who always ask good questions, and we're very fond of them. But, let's not always see the same hands, children. Tony Cava, the floor is yours.
Hi. If this is Hollywood Squares, I guess I'm Wally Cox. That would make me. Whoa, that went over like a lead balloon. Oh,
no, I got it.
Yeah, great. My plan is I'm going to start showering again when this is over. So my wife has appreciate that.
Such an excellently candid admission.
Yes, at least on a bi-weekly basis. So my question is like COVID and president related, and I might be asking the wrong person, Natasha. So I'm sorry if I put this on the
okay.
spot. But I thought I had read that one of Trump's COVID meds, and it could be the dexamethasone, retards the immunoresponse and thus can increase both viral shedding and the recommended quarantine period. And I had read where it would increase it to up to 20 days. So if that's the case, is it really safe for Biden to share a stage with Trump on the 15th of October? And regardless that, why is it the debate commission seems to be putting the onus on Biden to refuse to debate when arguably Trump and Pence should be quarantining?
Good question. I don't know anything about shedding of the viral load. I don't know anything about the shedding of the viral load. Oh, do you?
So I can answer in a medically illiterate sort of way the drug question. But before I do you have thoughts on the commission and their handling of the situation?
Well, look, I mean, there were concessions made rightfully to the Biden campaign about putting plexiglass in between Pence and Kamala on Wednesday. Pence has come out and said that he doesn't want plexiglass to separate them. So, I mean, I don't know.
He's not the one who risks getting infected.
Right. So, I don't really know how they're going to be. I mean, it's like dealing with people that just are not rational on any level. I mean, why wouldn't you want to take those extra precautions if you can? So I just don't know. I mean, I think they're doing the best that they can, and especially they said we're going to be 12 feet apart. We're going to do plexiglass, and now it's the Trump campaign that seems to be wanting to take these risks, which is, there's no explanation for it. But yeah, viral load, go for it.
I actually think there is an explanation for it, which is that Pence knows that there is vanishingly small chance that Kamala Harris is infected, and there is a significant chance that he is infected. And so all of the risk is on one
100%.
side, and it's not his.
100%. I agree 100%.
You know, it's the, pardon me for the very crude metaphor, but it's, who doesn't want to wear a condom in sex, right?
No.
But it's plexiglass. I mean,
it's like, why is that a crude metaphor? That is actually the metaphor that we have.
It's actually a precise metaphor.
Yeah, it is a precise. And I've kind of been thinking about this for a long time. Like, it is a precise metaphor. Like, I have hung out with people, and I feel like we all get like tested before we like hang out in like a group setting or whatever, even if we're outside. And there was like I made a joke to someone once that I was like, oh, it feels like this is like a porno movie or something, that like we're like shooting a porno and like everyone has to get tested before they show up in person. And like, but it's not actually that different, because it's actually just exactly how disease works. And like the fact that like all of us have to deal with this in like an airborne way is like really reasonable. Like, that is the way that you should deal with it. And like the idea that we stigmatize it by being like, it's like wearing a condom during sex, or it's like sex, or it's like whatever, is exactly why, to a certain extent, I think that people don't want to wear masks. I think that they like think of it as like this kind of weird, like, I'm so worried about something that like happening, and I just want to like engage, like, and I don't blame them to a certain
of course
extent,
you blame them, Kate. Come on.
Okay. No,
the more likely you are to be infected already, the lower the cost to you of not taking reasonable precautions. And for those of us who grew up during the AIDS epidemic, this is a perfectly well understood, like
Yeah,
this is the way.
this is actually like to keep comparing it to the AIDS epidemic is like a great way of like understanding it. Like I think that like when I say that like I understand them, I understand their desire to not have to worry about it because they don't want to be the type of like the AIDS epidemic population in the 80s or 90s. Does
Right.
that make sense? Is that a better
No,
like I understand that they don't want to like to engage in that type of like that type of check because they don't want to like acknowledge the fact that they are contagious and like the people they are with might be contagious, and there is like a like some moment of passion or some moment of like closeness
and also,
like
let's
yeah.
just, again, they don't bear the risk. There is zero, not zero, but near zero chance that Kamala Harris is going to catch the coronavirus, or that Mike Pence is going to catch the coronavirus from Kamala Harris. There is a non-zero chance that Kamala Harris is going to catch the coronavirus from Mike Pence. So it is super
100%.
easy for Mike Pence to say, well, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Like, come on, let's just be real about it. The answer to Tony's question, at least as I understand it, about dextromethasone is that this is a drug that is given, it has immunosuppressant qualities, and it is given to patients with relatively advanced COVID in order to suppress what are called cytokine storms, which are kind of hyper reactions of the immune system in an effort to fight COVID that themselves have very negative health implications. I don't know the details of it, but they can lead to very serious effects, including some of the deaths that have occurred. And so the idea is past a certain disease point, you actually want to have an immunosuppressant quality to prevent these sort of hyperimmune responses that can themselves be deadly. And so this has led to some speculation that the president's disease is a little bit more advanced than people had understood before, or that the White House was saying, because otherwise you wouldn't be giving him the dextromethasone and dextropromethazone in particular. David Batts. Once again, I want to flag David Batts as somebody who is on the show a great deal, and that is no shame to David Batts. We love David and his dog shirt images, which match today's dog shirt rather precisely, and his Lisa Page puppet images. We love all of that, but we do note that y'all shouldn't be letting David be on every day. That's on you, not on David. Sir, your question.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Natasha. Appreciate you being on today. What are your thoughts about the equities of the fair reporters covering the White House beat, where last I heard is 3, and maybe the number is higher now, who have COVID, probably as a function of their job? Is this the time to put a camera into the briefing room and have no humans be in there? How much truth do they get anyway? So interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that the networks are going to continue to put the reporters in because it is high drama. Typically, every time there's a contentious briefing between reporters and the press secretary. So I think there's probably a near zero chance that they would ever, unless there was you would think that right now would probably be the moment when they pull reporters out because of the outbreak at the White House. And I don't actually know when the next briefing is actually going to be because Kayleigh McEnany now has COVID. But yeah, I think that there's been a debate internally in newsrooms across the country about the value of these press briefings. And that is obviously going to continue as long as this COVID outbreak continues. Sometimes it's good to get the press secretary on record about certain things, because it then allows you to compare that to their past statements or their future statements, and it allows you to see where they don't match up, and allows you to catch them in lies. But other than that, other than just realizing that these people don't always tell the truth, which is something that we've already known for a long time, there's typically not a lot of value in those briefings, which I think is the general consensus among Washington reporters.
Yeah. That's actually
Daniel.
super helpful.
Oh.
No. That's it.
Daniel, the floor is yours. You're not in your usual place. You're wearing a blue shirt, not a black shirt. My whole world is discombobulated by your presentation today.
I'll be quick. So what scares you most about a Biden-Trump transition period if Biden wins the election?
Ooh, a lot. Well, I think that it's going to be really chaotic. There are people in the White House who are already preparing for that transition. It's their entire job to do that. And they've been doing that behind the scenes and professionally and quietly. So the infrastructure will presumably be in place for that transition to happen. But the unpredictable factor here, of course, is Trump. If he loses, is he going to contest it? Definitely. Is he going to try to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the mail-in ballots? Definitely. He's already doing that. So I think there's probably a 1% chance that he actually is gracious, especially if the election is tight, which it probably will be. Unless you believe the CNN poll today, which says that Biden is actually leading by 16 or 17 points nationally, which was actually a really significant poll. So, yeah, I mean, I think that just the fights that will probably happen during the months after the election are probably going to be very trying for reporters and for the American public. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's scary to think that people are considering the possibility that Trump just might not want to leave. That's been out there for quite some time now, so we'll just have to see what happens.
People always talk about the first 100 days of a presidency. I think the last 100 days of this presidency may be something we talk about for a long time. We're at day 106 right now. Hold on to your seats and put on your seatbelts.
Yeah, definitely.
Christopher, the floor is yours.
As a fellow NatSec dog parent from the same, got my dog from the same rescue outfit as Wally.
I did. Oh, amazing.
What does it say about POTUS that he has such a low opinion about canine companions as a constant rhetorical foil for vanquishing his perceived enemies and adversaries in defeat, quote, like a dog?
Says so much. And I think, yes, see? Oh, I think they would agree with me. I think it says a lot about your ability for empathy and compassion when you have an animal to take care of, and your attitude towards dogs, and just generally. This is the first president, I think, in a very long time that hasn't had a dog, and you can read into that how you want to, but I think it's pretty consistent with everything that we know about Trump being very self-centered, being unwilling to
he does have a
really
young
empathize with anything. I mean, yeah, but there's even, questions about his relationship with his kids, except for Ivanka, but I don't know. I mean, his like a dog insults are probably just force of habit at this point. He's probably been saying it for decades, so who knows?
Yeah.
I just want to add to that there's something else about, as somebody who wears a dog shirt, to engage with a dog, you have to be willing to be silly.
Yeah.
Because nobody talks
Great
to a
point.
dog, the way we talk to each other. You never say, "So, Gurgi, how was your morning?" Like that, like you don't do that. You say, "Oh, Gurgi," right? Like you have to be willing to look silly.
To be
And
vulnerable.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, and you have to be willing to kind of love unconditionally and be adored unconditionally and be silly in the process. And those are the things that Trump is never willing to do. Esther,
So
the floor is
yeah.
yours.
This
Hi,
is my,
Esther.
can you see my, hi. I don't know if you can see mine.
Oh,
We
hi,
certainly
buddy.
There he
can.
is.
Hello,
Name?
cutie pie.
His name is Zeev, Hebrew for joy.
Oh.
I
He's
love
a wonderful.
It. That's so
Well,
great.
he's the one I'm silly with, but he gets a lot of baby talk.
Oh, that's
Anyway,
nice.
You don't
I'm
think
gonna-
see, like Donald Trump doesn't do baby talk, right? Like never does baby
Oh,
talk.
God, no. I've never even heard him laugh.
Steve is the
Yeah.
best. Thank you so much, Esther,
he
for
is.
sharing him.
Quick question, not really political at all. I have 2 young adult children, ages 22, 27, and they're always talking to me about the world they live in, and we're comparing it with the one I thought I was living in and grew up in. So I guess I'm curious, you're 6 years out of graduation, politics aside, what's the big lesson, your big take-home lesson from these last 6 years that's been a big change in how you see the world?
That's a really big question. Probably the death of civility and really any kind of general belief in objective truth, which as a reporter is really tough to reckon with. Just knowing that no matter what you report, no matter what you say, no matter how many sources you have, there will always be this faction primarily led by the most powerful person in the country that will be, trying to create an alternate reality. And that I think is probably going to be a lingering trauma of the Trump era in particular. This is not a new tactic for authoritarian leaders, obviously, but it is new, I think, in our shared understanding of American democracy and the role of the press. So yeah, I mean, I think that general sense that, they say the both sidesism and this attempt to ever have a collective shared understanding of what's real is probably one of the biggest things that I've had to come to terms with. Obviously, as a reporter, you try to combat that, but when you do, because of the aforementioned lack of civility and kind of normalcy from the administration, the attacks on you personally are just unprecedented. I mean, I have horror stories about it. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think that it might slowly return to normal after this, but the mentality, I think that it's kind of steeped within us, will probably linger for a while.
E.G. Phillips,
E.G.,
you are our next question.
Hey,
And the last question, I think.
oh dear. So I assume you can hear me.
Yeah.
Indeed.
All right. Yeah, we need to come up with a better signaling system overall to verify everything. I can't believe in this day and age of Zoom that it's we haven't come up with a better protocol. Anyway, I saw Chris Wray had released a rather long video earlier today with a bunch of other national security mucky-mucks from the veritable alphabet soup of agencies, ostensibly to reassure people that the elections are going to go well. I don't know who's going to watch the whole thing, but I thought it was a rather curious artifact. And I was wondering if you had any scuttlebutt as to how it came about and also how the White House and more importantly Trump is reacting behind the scenes to it.
So stay tuned. It's a really great question, and it's worth looking into because this was a 9-minute kind of PSA about the security of the election, and it pretty much goes against everything that the president has been trying to convey about the elections. So how this actually got past the White House is very interesting. I think there's been a general effort to be more public and transparent about the foreign interference that's happening and about measures that are being taken to secure election infrastructure. And they're trying to not repeat 2016 by being a little bit more out front of the issue. But are they doing, like, were they able to get away with this because the president's been in the hospital for the last 4 days and distracted by coronavirus? That would be a very interesting thing. Trump obviously fired the acting director of national intelligence earlier this year just for briefing Congress privately about what Russia was doing in 2020. So this was interesting. And there was no necessarily new content in what they said, but it was a big step. I mean, I don't remember the last time I've seen something like this where they spoke for nearly 10 minutes with the head of CISA, DHS, the FBI director, the NSA director, about, and the top counterintel chief about this issue. So I think it's a positive thing. I think it's remains to be seen whether it lands on Trump's radar and what he's going to do. So good question.
They snuck it past while he was sick. Chris Wray is like, this is my chance. I can say something true.
Right.
Natasha Bertrand, you're a great American. Thanks for joining us.
It was so fun to meet you. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. It was really great.
Come
I'm
back
sad we
anytime.
Can we meet Wally?
Oh yes. Wait, let me just get a treat and then he'll come over here. Wally, come here. He sees the treat, so he's like, there he is.
Oh, what a good boy.
Oh, good boy. Good boy.
How old is he?
He's 1.5.
Nina's
wow.
He's eating his treat.
I don't know what that's.
All he cares
Nina
about is food, so.
Nina can't see it, but it looks like she can.
Yeah, exactly. So Kate and I have many things in common, but one of them is that we both have one-eyed dogs.
Oh, that's amazing.
But my one-eyed dog can sort of see out of his one eye. Nina can't see out of her one eye. So she's sort of a no-eyed dog.
How old is she?
Yeah, I have no idea.
You don't know?
28.
They told it, yeah, exactly. They told us like 3 when we got her like 6 years ago at the shelter, and then we took her to the vet, and the vet laughed like uproariously, and I refuse to believe whatever the vet told us. I'm just like going with it. I'm just like, whatever. You're just cute, and I love you, and I'm gonna like do whatever it takes.
I know.
So
he's like trying to get the treat.
What it's like. Hi, hello, Wally.
Hello.
What a good boy.
Very spoiled.
We will be back tomorrow. Sorry, Kate?
Who are we back tomorrow with?
Pete Strzok.
Oh my gosh.
That'll be good.
That'll be fun. We're gonna talk about his book.
We're gonna talk compromised. We're gonna talk being accused of treason by the president. We're gonna talk. We're gonna. Pete's a fun guy, and we're gonna also talk about things that can't even presage. There's one more question, Natasha Bertrand, that we have to ask you before we let you go.
What is the question? I don't know.
What is the word of the day?
The word of the day. I don't know.
Natasha and I have a game when we're both on television.
Oh,
we assign each other the word of the day, and we do it when we're on TV together. No, we assign each other a word to get into our joint TV hit, and
Ben is really good at that.
And we can see,
eggplant.
That's way too hard. It's like an SAT word, like in Congress or something. I don't know, like something that you can
it's got to be something that you can slip in. But the last time we did it, we both got it done, and the hosts did not notice. We will, of course, not say which host that was. We will be back tomorrow, 22 hours and 53 minutes from now. That is a true story. And until then, we don't have fun anymore, but we do have presidential lawyers who ask us if we're on drugs.
That's fun. It's pretty
Ooh.
fun.